5 gunshots broke the silence of a quiet neighborhood. And in that instant, a marriage that lasted only 2 weeks came to a violent end. When police arrived, they didn't find a wife in shock or a woman begging for help. They found her standing over her husband's body with the calmness of someone who had already rehearsed every step. She didn't run. She didn't scream. She simply wiped his phone clean with what used to be her wedding veil, placed it beside him, and began walking away as if the scene unfolding behind her no longer concerned her. Witnesses later told investigators they had never seen anything like it. A newlywed wife, unshaken, unbothered, almost detached from the fact that the man she married just 14 days earlier was bleeding out at her feet. When officers stopped her, she offered no explanation, only one quiet sentence that immediately changed the direction of the investigation. A sentence so unsettling, prosecutors later fought over how much of it the jury should hear. And as the evidence unraveled, a rushed divorce, a trail of lies, a hidden obsession, and the shocking discovery of a tattoo she refused to explain, one truth became unmistakable. This story did not begin with the gunshots. The ending was already written long before the first bullet was fired. But to understand why a wife would track down her own husband after a divorce, why she fired 5 rounds into his chest, and why she thought she could walk away from it, we must go back to the night she made a decision that sealed both their fates.
If you want to uncover more chilling true crime stories and see justice exposed, subscribe to Crime Vaults as we bring light to the darkest true crime cases and never miss the secrets hidden in plain sight.
Just minutes before the shooting, the neighborhood was still and uneventful. The husband had returned home alone, pulling into the driveway after finalizing the divorce papers earlier that afternoon. He believed the worst was behind him. He believed the chapter with his wife was over. What he didn't know was that she had followed him for 3 days, watching his movements, memorizing his schedule, and waiting for the moment she felt he deserved. She approached from the side of the house, moving with intention. There was no hesitation, no uncertainty in her steps. The decision had already been made long before she raised the gun. When the first shot struck him, he barely had time to react. The second and third ensured he could not stand. The final 2 were delivered as he lay on the ground, wounded and defenseless. The precision of the attack made investigators later question whether this was a crime of emotion or something far more calculated. Immediately after the gunfire, she did not check if he was alive. She did not attempt to flee. Instead, she carried out the next part of her plan, removing his phone from his pocket, wiping away every trace of her presence, and placing it beside him as if to suggest a robbery or struggle had taken place. Her composure in those moments would later become one of the prosecution's strongest points. She acted not like a woman in shock, but like someone completing a routine she had practiced in her mind. By the time the first neighbors stepped outside, drawn by the echo of gunshots, she was already walking toward her car. No panic, no urgency, just a quiet, steady retreat into the night. The husband lay motionless on the cold pavement. The woman he had married mere weeks earlier had already decided that this was how their story would end. After leaving the scene, she drove without speeding, without drawing attention, following the exact route she had rehearsed. Her first stop was a secluded, empty lot on the outskirts of town, a place she had visited twice in the days leading up to the shooting. There, she removed the gloves she had worn, the stained veil she used to wipe the phone, and the jacket she had discarded when the gunfire ended. She set everything on the ground in a neat circle, then poured lighter fluid across the items. The fire burned low and controlled, just as she intended. Every object she believed could tie her to the crime slowly disintegrated into ash.
When the flames died, she gathered what remained into a plastic bag, careful to avoid touching anything with her bare hands, and placed it in the trunk of her car. From there, she drove to a small roadside motel. Surveillance cameras later showed her entering with a steady posture, no signs of distress, no unusual behavior. She checked in under a name she had used before, signed the ledger with a practiced signature, and walked to her room carrying nothing but a purse. Inside, she began constructing the version of events she planned to present to police. She rehearsed the timeline, the locations, the details she wanted to emphasize. According to her, she would have spent the entire night at her sister's house, left early in the morning, and reported her husband missing when she realized he had not returned home. She practiced the tone of concern she would use, the pauses, even the questions she planned to ask officers to make herself appear confused and worried. It was not the reaction of a woman struggling after an act of violence. It was the performance of someone preparing to distance herself from a crime she believed she had successfully hidden. What she failed to consider was the detail that eventually led investigators to suspect her. Hours before police released any information, she called the station to report her husband missing. Too early, too rehearsed, too confident in her story. That call placed her on the radar long before she realized the walls around her were already beginning to close. The truth did not arrive loudly. It crept in, quietly, through a moment that should have been ordinary. 2 weeks after the wedding, the husband noticed something he had never seen before. A small bandage peeking from beneath his wife's blouse, a nervous hand covering her chest whenever he entered the room, a strange stiffness in the way she moved, as if hiding a fresh wound or a fresh secret. At first, he said nothing. People heal from many things, he told himself that. But the uneasiness refused to leave him. Then came the night she forgot to lock the bathroom door. He walked in and froze. There, across her chest, bold, dark, unmistakably new, was another man's name. Not a design, not a symbol, a name. Her ex's name. Fresh ink, fresh betrayal, fresh pain. Before he could speak, she clutched her towel, avoiding his eyes. But the damage had already spread deeper than any tattoo could reach. Later, when he confronted her, another blow landed. She admitted she hadn't stopped at her chest. The same name was tattooed in an even more intimate place, a place she had vowed belonged to her husband now, but had carved for someone else. He didn't shout, he didn't threaten. He simply stood there, silent, shattered, watching everything he believed about his new marriage dissolve in a single moment. And in that silence, their home became a battlefield waiting for its first shot.
If you want to uncover more chilling true crime stories and see justice exposed, subscribe to Crime Vaults as we bring light to the darkest true crime cases and never miss the secrets hidden in plain sight.
To understand why a newlywed wife would fire 5 bullets into her husband's chest, why she would plan, rehearse, and execute a cover-up with meticulous precision, it is necessary to go back to the moment everything truly began. She had never stopped loving her ex, even after saying "I do" to another man, even after the wedding, the honeymoon, the vows. Her heart remained tethered to a man she could not forget. Friends and family had warned the husband, had whispered about her past relationships, but he dismissed them. He believed marriage could erase history. He was wrong. Weeks before the wedding, she made a decision to mark her body permanently with the name of the man she could never release. One tattoo across her chest, another in the most private and intimate of places, an act so deliberate, so secret, that she thought it would remain hidden forever. The husband discovered the tattoos only 2 weeks after the wedding. The discovery shattered his trust, shattered his heart, and set into motion a chain of events that no one could have predicted.
Divorce papers were signed, separation became inevitable, and with each passing hour, her obsession turned darker, her mind sharper, her plan more lethal. She had already imagined the confrontation, the argument, the moment he would walk away. She had already decided that if he could not love her entirely, if he could not forgive the betrayal, then she would make him pay, literally. And so the shooting was not spontaneous, it was premeditated, a final, terrifying crescendo to a story that began long before anyone realized the danger that lurked behind the smile of a newlywed bride. Long before the wedding, long before the gunshots, she had been trapped in a relationship that consumed her mind and heart. Her ex was more than a lover. He was an obsession. Every message, every call, every fleeting moment of attention became a thread that tied her to him, even after they separated. The breakup had been messy. Public arguments, accusations, threats, all the hallmarks of a love turned toxic. She had pleaded, manipulated, and fought to keep him in her life. He had moved on, tried to leave her behind, but she could not accept it. Her identity had become inseparable from the attention of a man who no longer loved her. When she met her future husband, it was not out of love alone. It was a desperate attempt to replace, to conquer, to prove that she could still control a heart, even if it wasn't her ex's. Marriage was never simply a promise of love. It was a shield, a tool, a stage for obsession to continue. Even during the engagement, she kept her ex close in secret. Texts, calls, and private messages that she thought no one would ever see. And the tattoos? They were never an afterthought. They were a final act of defiance, a permanent imprint of a past she refused to surrender. A past that would haunt her new husband and ultimately drive her to commit an act of violence that would stun everyone who knew her. The toxic love she had carried for years became the blueprint for everything that followed: the betrayal, the secrecy, the lies, and ultimately the shooting. Her obsession had not ended. It had only evolved, waiting for the perfect moment to explode. The wedding was beautiful on the surface. White flowers, flowing dresses, the soft glow of candles, and vows exchanged under the eyes of friends and family. To outsiders, it seemed like the perfect beginning of a new life. But beneath the smiles and the photos, cracks were already forming, small, almost imperceptible fissures in a foundation built on obsession rather than trust. During the reception, she checked her phone repeatedly, glancing at messages from a man who should have no place in her life. The groom noticed her distraction, the brief furrow of her brow, the way she avoided eye contact for long stretches. He attributed it to nerves or perhaps pre-wedding jitters, never imagining the storm that lay beneath the surface. On the first night of their marriage, the tension intensified. She spent hours in the bathroom, locked in private, while he slept beside her, unaware of the secret she carried. The fresh ink of a tattoo was still tender, a mark she had hidden until the right moment. Her thoughts were consumed not by love for him, but by the shadow of her past, a past that she had promised to leave behind, but could not. Even in the moments that should have been intimate, her mind was elsewhere. Every smile, every touch, calculated. Every pause, every excuse, a way to cover the traces of what she had done before the wedding. The husband, naive and trusting, believed love could overcome any secret. He was wrong. The first seeds of tension, planted long before the divorce papers were signed, grew silently in those early days. A hidden tattoo, a lingering obsession, a betrayal concealed beneath the facade of newlywed bliss. The discovery was accidental, almost mundane. A glance, a movement, a moment that would shatter everything.
2 weeks after the wedding, the husband noticed a small bandage peeking from beneath her blouse. Curious, he asked, and she hesitated. A pause, a flicker of something he had never seen before. When she finally revealed the tattoo, the truth hit him like a physical blow. Across her chest, boldly etched in black ink, was a name that did not belong to him. Her ex, the man she had promised she would never see again. It was not a design. It was not abstract. It was unmistakably deliberate. The betrayal did not end there. Hidden where only the most intimate eyes could see, another tattoo bore the same name, a secret mark. One that should have belonged exclusively to the husband had been claimed for someone else. The revelation crushed him silently. He did not shout, he did not scream, he simply stood, paralyzed by disbelief and horror. From that moment, the marriage existed in a state of decay. The trust that should have bound them together was gone. Every conversation became weighted with suspicion. Every glance carried accusation. And the wife, calm and calculating, allowed the tension to fester, knowing that the moment he walked away, her plan would reach its terrifying conclusion. The tattoos were more than ink. They were a symbol of obsession, a permanent record of betrayal, and the silent blueprint for the violence that would follow. And when he finally decided to leave, when the divorce papers were signed, the pieces were set, the stage was ready, the final act was inevitable. The confrontation began quietly, almost innocuously. 2 weeks after discovering the tattoos, the husband returned home one evening, hoping for a conversation, hoping for an explanation. He wanted answers. She was prepared to give none. He asked about the ink across her chest. She shrugged, gave a rehearsed excuse, deflecting blame and pretending it was meaningless. But when he noticed the second tattoo, hidden, intimate, undeniable, her calm facade faltered. The mask slipped for a moment, revealing a glimmer of rage, a shadow of obsession. He demanded the truth. She refused. She laughed softly, a chilling sound, and whispered that the tattoos were symbolic, that he had no reason to be angry, that love and loyalty could not constrain her. Words that would have been absurd if not for the raw intensity in her eyes, a warning disguised as mockery. The argument escalated, tensions flaring with every passing second. The husband, stunned by betrayal, reached his breaking point. He decided that separation was the only way forward. Divorce papers were drafted and signed. To him, it was over. To her, it was unacceptable. Her obsession ignited fully in that instant. She could not allow him to leave, could not allow him to reclaim his life without her shadow haunting it. Every calculated thought, every hidden preparation, every act of control converged in a single, terrifying decision. And so, in the dead of night, she followed him. Every step, every movement rehearsed in her mind for weeks, now poised to unfold. What happened next was the inevitable result of obsession, betrayal, and a mind consumed by what it could not relinquish. She raised the gun. She fired 5 shots, each one deliberate. Her plan, perfected in silence, executed without hesitation. The shooting was no accident. It was the final, violent punctuation to a story that had been building since the moment the first tattoo was inked. The 5 gunshots echoed into the night, then faded into stillness. When the final shell hit the ground, she did not scream. She did not run. She simply stood over his body, breathing slowly, studying him with an unsettling calm, as if confirming the result of a calculated experiment. She checked his pulse, not out of concern, but to ensure her work was complete. Then the cover-up began. She dragged his phone away from his hand and placed it several feet from the body. She wiped down the doorknob, the railing, the chair he had sat on moments before the shooting.
every movement was deliberate, practiced, almost ritualistic. She believed she could control the narrative as easily as she had tried to control him. She staged the scene with precision. A forced entry, a misplaced wallet, a drawer left open to mimic a robbery gone wrong. It was sloppy, but she was too consumed by panic disguised as confidence to realize it. When she finally dialed emergency services, her voice trembled at all the right moments. She told them her estranged husband had been attacked, that she had arrived too late, that she found him already dying. She cried without tears, breathed heavily on command, and rehearsed the lie in her head as the sirens grew louder. The police arrived within minutes. She met them with shaking hands and wide eyes, a picture of grief molded for sympathy. She answered questions quickly, giving just enough detail to seem cooperative, but not enough to expose her inconsistencies. She claimed she had been on her way to return his belongings after the divorce. She insisted she had no reason to harm him. She portrayed herself as a devastated wife still clinging to hope of reconciliation. But detectives noticed the small things: the absence of forced entry, the unnatural staging of the room, the faint scent of gunpowder on her clothes, and most importantly, her story changed each time she repeated it. In that moment, suspicion was born, not loud, not confrontational, but quiet and observant. A seed planted in the minds of investigators who had seen too many scenes like this, too many tragedies wrapped in rehearsed lies. And while she walked away from the crime scene that night, seemingly free, the truth had already started to unwind. In the days following the shooting, she moved through life as if the crime belonged to someone else. She answered questions. She attended interviews. She repeated the same shaky story to detectives, believing consistency would protect her. But with every retelling, her confidence slipped, and the cracks in her lie widened. Detectives had already pieced together the truth long before she realized the investigation had turned against her. Phone records placed her near the crime scene hours earlier than she claimed. Neighbors recalled hearing an argument between two familiar voices. The staged robbery collapsed under forensic scrutiny, revealing fingerprints she had forgotten to wipe, footprints she believed no one would notice. When officers finally arrived at her home with an arrest warrant, she did not cry. She did not scream. She simply stared, as if calculating whether another lie could undo everything. But for the first time since the shooting, she had no words. In the courtroom, the mask she had worn for months began to disintegrate. Her attorneys argued self-defense, then panic, then emotional trauma, each explanation contradicting the last. But the prosecution presented a narrative carved from evidence, obsession, and motive. They showed the tattoos. They showed the messages she sent to her ex, messages written only hours before she shot her husband. And they showed the divorce decree, the single document that transformed her from a betrayed partner into a woman who could not accept being left.
If you want to uncover more chilling true crime stories and see justice exposed, subscribe to Crime Vaults as we bring light to the darkest true crime cases and never miss the secrets hidden in plain sight.